Now, the Grove level, I actually
there's a whole half of it that you cut out.
I cut a lot of it. So I watched a lot of videos about this module, and the biggest piece of feedback that I received was, don't drop them at that point in the Grove, because the Grove as written is a slog. It is well, let's go ahead and pull it up. So here is the Grove DM map, and I am sharing it with the folks who are still in the...
Holy crap, that's much bigger.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. So the place you were theoretically supposed to start is area 43 up here in the northwest, I'm sorry. And here, let me go ahead and make this large.
Oh, I see what you mean. That would have been monstrous.
Yes. So check this out, okay? So we've got this area here, and I'm looking at this. There is there's an encounter here with a bugbear and 2 giant rats, which you would have had to fight, because the module does not assume that you're going to make the goblins yours, right? That is a thing that my players tend to do, but we were assuming that we were still hostile at this point, right? So you would have had to fight through this room. You would have come down into this bottom room here, which is the central garden, more skeletons, more sort of kind of meaningless combat. Then you would have had a choice. You could have gone to the east here into the lab, where the same thing would have happened, right? Mm-hmm. Where you would have seen the experiment of the giant rat instead of the giant spider being made into a horrible plant creature. You would have had to fight about a half a dozen goblins in this room as well. So more combat, more, as Jeff was saying, it did not seem like an efficient use of time, an expenditure of time.
Yeah, I think if this had been included in there, we would probably be running the boss fight tonight as opposed to...
Oh, yes, absolutely, because it gets worse. If you take the south passage, you end up in this massive fuck-all fissure that leads to 2 places that are literally nothing. Okay? This is my gripe with the Sunless Citadel. Okay, this area is a gripe that I have with the module as written. I think this whole area is not useful. I think it is filler. I think it is the Dragon Ball Z episodes where Goku is trying to power up for 5 episodes. This fissure here, 44, here's the box text. A rift opens here, its debris-strewn floor 2 feet below that of the corridor. No phosphorescent fungus grows in the rift. The corridor continues past the rift, though the opening of the rift has caused it to shift 10 feet to the west. A number of 2-foot diameter holes riddle the floor. The smell of burnt earth hangs in the air. And the only other thing it says is that the holes in the floor extend as far down as you can go. If you throw a rope down there, it'll be as deep as you can guess. If you decide to go down to this little crack here in room 45, there is a fire snake, and that's it, and some sapphires.
What's in 46?
In 46, and I'm reading this word for word, my friends. Faded mosaic tiles still decorate parts of the wall, but most have fallen to the dust-covered floor and shattered. Situated at the center of the chamber stands a slim pedestal of rusted iron, shaped like an upright dragon. In the dragon's mouth rests an empty tray. Quote, "The room once held items of importance to the old dragon cult. The remaining features are dust-covered and worthless." Literally, the module is telling me that this room is worthless. In those words, friends, they say this room is worthless. So why is it there?
So you go down a pit, into a fight room, down a hall, into a nothing room, and you have essentially two apparent hallways. One leads to a fight, one is empty, and I suppose you're supposed to explore the fissure down to that spare room on the way out.
Maybe, I don't know. Because, of course, you can also take the fissure back up to the lab, right? Eventually, it'll get you back there. But again, that's an entire session. Mm-hmm. That combat, that combat, that exploration would have been an entire session and you would have gained nothing.
Yeah.
So from a game production standpoint, specifically for RPGs, frequently the writing process and the art process are kind of concurrent. And sometimes artwork comes into place without being fully informed by the writing. So it's entirely possible that the artwork for this particular dungeon was already created while they were already writing things up for the dungeon itself. And then, they see the map. It's like, okay, well, there's this whole chunk of shit that I didn't account for. Okay, it's nothing. Fuck this noise.
And I could,
that for me, that smacks of angry, bitter writer.
I could like make those encounters into more flavor, right? Those goblins have jobs. They are doing those jobs. You can use that to get more of an insight into what Belak is up to. But I think the one spider strapped to the table did that job, right? Yeah. I did not need to give you a whole bunch of goblins and skeletons doing a whole bunch of different tasks to show that Belak was engaging in horrible, unethical experiments, because literally I just show you the experiment.
Like, you could absolutely like use like this rift here, instead of it being like a nothing chamber with nothing stuff, but with nothing sauce, you can just have it be like, this is where he's keeping his finished product, and like this is where like he's storing his eventual army. I love the mental image of like opening up a room and it's just these like arranged in rows like a garden, these fucked up plant people zombies, and you're like, and your option is probably then just, I closed the door.
And that, yes, you can turn this area into something great. I thought that by the time we finished the goblin fight, we were ready to get to the end of the campaign, or to the end of the module.
Narratively, that makes sense.
So I dropped you instead into this Southern Arboretum.
49.
The bottom 49.
And put debris in the areas that would lead to that rift, right? I said that there were places that were caved in because I didn't want you to have to deal with any of that nonsense. So I just cut out a good solid third of the map.
But when we were playing through, it didn't feel like a third of a map was missing.
No, and here's the other thing. The other thing I did here in the bottom grove, I don't know if you noticed, but I removed all of the combat encounters up until the end, okay? And we'll talk about that in a second. So
because it's just filler.
Exactly. And not only that, but I knew that I would be beefing up Belak, and I wanted you to be there at your best. I did not want you to have to spend a bunch of spell slots and HP before you got... I wanted you to meet the bad guy at your peak. I wanted to pull a Goku on you. And so there was...
Also, we had the goblins on our side at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, and you gave us like you gave us like a grinder encounter just to keep us on edge.
Well, that
was great,
and for the entertainment of the viewers. But yes,
the viewers were in fact entertained.
So initially, this room 49 would have been another fight. This hallway here had the one hobgoblin gardener that you would have had to fight. This room 49 had another fire snake that you would have had to fight. This room 49 had the 3 skeletons that you would have had to fight. And then you would have gotten to this northern room, which is the one room that didn't have a fight, and you would have made your way to this shrine. So I think that like streamlining you through and describing what you see as you go was a much more effective way of pacing than having you deal with all of these encounters one after another after another.
Yeah, and it definitely made more narrative sense just because of the high note that was the goblin battle.
That's also true.
Not just from the actual fight itself from a mechanical standpoint, but also for like the narrative high point, because like Echo's coming off a high. Like where else can they go? Where else could you go from here?
Yeah.
Right. You took out the mid-boss, and now you're going to go fight the boss, and it's going to feel really bad if you just have to grind through minions to get there.
Yeah.
Especially since we're like, at this point, if you're doing it by like XP by encounter, that might feel like a necessary step just to like get you geared up for that fight.
Yeah.
But we're doing these encounters by keystones. So that feels like just utterly superfluous.
I agree. And I think that if people are really into the combat aspect of the game, I could see how it could be interesting. But like, it feels like the same encounter over and over and over again, and I'm not down for that. Once we have the encounter, we're done with it. Let's move on and do something different.
Oh, I just read what was up with the shrine.
So let's talk about the shrine. So the shrine has two features to it. If you had said in Draconic, let sorceress light illuminate my soul, or whatever, it gives you advantage on charisma checks for the next 24 hours.
Cool.
If you had discovered that, it would have made the Sunless Citadel probably a go-to place for you to visit before going off on adventures. But I'm not going to allow that because your characters did not notice that particular aspect of it. The reason you were warned away from the shrine is that a shadow lurks near the shrine. If you get very close to the shrine and try to inspect it, the shadow will attack you and deal that wonderful strength damage.
Ugh.
And that was an encounter that I was going to run if you decided to inspect the shrine. It was only because you rolled so well on your persuasion check or whatever that I told you to stay away from the shrine, because you deserved that piece of information given how well you rolled and how well you were role playing. But if you had gotten close to it, the shadow would have bitten you, and unless you continued to attack it, it would have left you alone after that. Like, if you stepped away from the shrine, it would not pursue. It would have been a nice, interesting, neat little different kind of encounter, and you all bypassed it, but I think it's a great encounter nonetheless.
I think it's fine. Like the entire charisma thing for 24 hours, sure. It would have been like going to and from the specific, going into the Sunless Citadel and all the bullshit that includes, into this place, into the shrine. I don't think that, unless we could move the shrine, but then you could make a reasonable assertion that by moving the shrine, it loses its power.
Probably, yeah. That's a reasonable assumption, I would say.
If you're willing to like trek through all of the Sunless Citadel bullshit to get here, then power to you. That said, I think that any future dealings with Ystryle will be very interesting, since she's clearly going to be farming her charisma for charisma buffs.
Indeed.
Going forward.
Either her or Calcrix.
Or both.
So
High Priestess.
You got the library up in Area 51. Area 51. And I also decided to drop one of the new magical items from Tasha's because there are very few items that increase spell DC. And I feel like Calder has been using his spells to such great effect that giving him a slight buff to his spell DC was a good way of him being able to continue doing the thing that he does. You're probably going to have this particular vial for the rest of the campaign.
I mean, it's especially since the only way I get my spell DC up is by deliberately not taking feats and going with the ability score increases, and that's already a hard sell.
It generally increases as your proficiency bonus increases as you generally level up. But yes.
Yeah, but it's slow going regardless.
And these items go up to +3, but I am very wary of anything that increases spell save DC more than a slight amount, because spell save DC, a lot of the time, a save can be the difference between ending a combat encounter and having an epic duel to the death, right? So I'm very careful about that sort of thing. I felt like a +1 was appropriate for you, and that was that. You went through this ridiculously weird, I don't understand the design behind this. Maybe it's another thing where the art was done ahead of time, where apparently the passage goes underneath the Arboretum and then back up.
Which is it's such a weird choice, because instead of going around.
I don't know.
Just to make it more compact.
Over here we had Belak's study, which Hyacinth was unable to pick open. Now, if you had gotten into this room prior to the fight, the explosive room would not have happened.
Yeah, that felt tacked on by you for just a
No, that was in the module. The explosive rune is in the module. I actually removed it and then put it back after the fact because of the order in which you did things. I was terrified that the explosive rune would kill Meepo, would finish, because it's 5d8 points of damage. It could very easily have doubled up Meepo's 10 HP just like Calcrix did, and I was worried that it would cause a riot, but it did not, because poor Hyacinth was unable to pick their way in, and then you had the one combat encounter I actually preserved. 3 skeletons.
The beginning skeletons, yeah.
3 skeletons, 4 twig blights. Boom. Now, from there, after you deal with them, what the module says is that every round as you move down the grove, 1d3 or -1 twig blights appear every round and attack you up to a maximum of 10. I felt like
misery.
I felt like a druid that knows that you're coming would instead set up an ambush where you would find yourself surrounded, right? So you were unperturbed until you made it here, at which time, Renee, I cannot overstate the amazingness of that video that you made for us, and the mask and
So good.
everything. Like, I don't know what I was expecting, because of course I know you are an extraordinarily talented role player and costume designer. I did not expect to be that blown away, and I loved everything about it.
Thank you. Well, you gave me enough lead time that I could actually do something cool with it.
Yeah, I contacted you more or less right when we started this.
Yeah.
And said, hey, do you want to guest as the villain? Yeah.
Yeah, and so that I had enough time to do enough research, to kind of figure out what the villain was about and kind of some cool things I could do with it. And I was like, oh, it's got this like plant thing going with it.
Yeah.
And so I went straight to Etsy and was able to find that really cool full face mask, which I can really only do for like an hour at a time.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I kind of start getting like anxiety and like...
It's very claustrophobic, it looked like.
Which is weird because I don't have claustrophobia usually. So it's just like, I think that plus nerves with doing this, because this is actually my first time really kind of digging into 5th edition D&D at all. So,
and to be fair, I gave you like the hardest of difficult assignments, because a moon druid, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, why I made it a moon druid, and I think that my choice was vindicated by the way that the combat went. And let's talk about the Belak fight for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Look, Ma, no scope. You just ran your group through this. Fantastic. I'm very interested to hear about your experiences as well. But Renee, what you were saying?
So prior to this, I did a quick run through with Rob of like some of the things that would be expected with the sheet, considering Rob did make a point of saying, hey, I'm going to be beefing up this sheet specifically for this group. So he kind of walked me through some of the basics, and like I knew kind of like the general, okay, roll this thing for skill check, roll this kind of save thing, like the basic mechanics around like the core thing you do to play D&D. I already was really familiar with, because that really hasn't changed.
No, yeah, it's the names have changed, but yeah.
I do like the addition of advantage and disadvantage personally, but I had also watched enough videos of actual plays and whatnot to kind of get a feel for what the flow of combat was going to look like. So I wasn't coming in completely blind, but it was my first time really kind of interacting with the rules. Fantasy Grounds and the fact that they basically had everything directly in front of me was super helpful. And then Rob and I kind of talked through, the various spells and what have you. And when I saw Thunderwave on the sheet, I'm like, well, shit, I have to use this at some point. I have to literally like look at Clarion and be like, this is how it's done. and that in fact did happen.
Yes. And targeting Meepo, like, and I actually really like what you did there, because we ended that combat right on time. And if you had stayed in Panther form and maybe multi-attacked Meepo, you probably could have done more damage to Meepo, but that would have extended the combat to the point where we would have had to stop combat and cliffhanger that until next time. And nobody wants to stop a session in the middle of combat. So I thought your choice to transform back down into druid form and use a spell that is a meme at this point in this game, in order to drop Meepo, who is also a meme in this game, was just absolutely amazing. Look, Ma, no scope. Really quick, just out of curiosity, did Meepo survive your game? Look, Ma, no scope. Meepo did manage to make it to the end of our game. Did he survive in your run of the Sunless Citadel? He did. Yay! Excellent. Good to hear. Everyone loves Meepo.
And like I was the one who was, specifically saying in the chat as a viewer saying, if Meepo dies, we riot. So naturally, playing the villain, I'm going to target Meepo.
The first one, yes. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
The encounter with Belak, I actually left more or less, with the exception of Belak himself, untouched. Bradford, what's her name, Sharwin, the Twig Blights appearing every round, all that stuff is baked in. The only thing I did was I noticed that Belak was a 4th level caster, and instead of making a 4th level NPC or using the one they had, I created a 4th level PC who is obviously way more powerful. And I know that the best laid plans always fail in the face of nuke damage. And I gave Belak all of the advantages. I gave him a magical item that gives him advantage on initiative and keeps him from being surprised. I gave him and all of his minions permanent bark skin. That's actually part of the module. That's not something I gave them. But I maintained that bark skin through his transformations. I actually have specific stats for Bear Belak and Panther Belak and Giant Spider Belak and Giant Toad Belak and Hyena Belak, because I wanted to have lots of options depending on which way the combat went. And you all almost nuked him before his first action.
I rolled like shit.
You almost nuked him before his first action, even with the initiative advantage. This is why I did it, and this is why I made him specifically a Moon Druid, because I knew he would need to be able to transform as a bonus action, or you would murder him. And that's exactly what happened. Now, if he had actually fallen instead in that first round, Sharwin would have administered a potion, and the rest of the fight would have continued as it was. Right? Belak would have stood up, transformed, it would have continued. But I want to really highlight how powerful player characters are once they know they are in the all-out mode. Right?
Yeah.
Once the party knows that it's balls to the wall. Go ahead, Renee.
I'm just noticing Lookma no scope in the chat was basically saying that the druid in the party ice daggered him on a crit. And that's actually remarkably similar to how Belak died in this particular
hot druid on druid action.
Yeah. No, cold druid on druid action.
Yes, cold, indeed.
Yeah, because there were lots of ice daggers that were used in that fight, specifically by Calder.
Well, ice dagger is an absurd spell.
It is.
It really is. But it's
also a worker.
Yeah.
And it's great to twin, it turns out.
Yeah.
It turns out.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Apparently, there's actually some debate in various D&D forums I've looked at about that. People have clarified that they never intended ice to be twinned because holy crap.
There needs to be a definitive list released by these folks that is of all of the spells that specifically can be twinned and at what level they can be twinned. That needs to happen. There just needs to be a definitive list. That's all there is to it.
Except that it's a
which would start even more arguments.
Fight because of how the nature of D&D is to expand its lexicon, and so if you're willing to update a master list with every
new that's true,
and every unearthed arcana and every book, it's daunting. I get why they don't, and so that's why they give guidelines of things that can and cannot be twinned and things that can and cannot be subject to whatever spells. And in theory, it's enough, except
When
they
it's
make
not.
exceptions to their own rules, like Ice Knife. I'm here. Here is my promise to you as a DM. I promise to absolutely abuse it in the way that benefits my party to survive.
Absolutely. And it falls rules as written under it. I think the reason why rules as intended, the area of effect damage, means that rules as intended, it should not work that way, right? You should not be able to double up that area of effect damage like you did. But rules as written, it works. And I like running my games to the level of min-maxing that my players rise to.
Rule of cool
And the fact that
also
Jeff is
applies.
in the game, you basically set the bar pretty high.
Yeah.
I love you, Jeff.
Love you too. The idea I have for it is that if I found that absurd combo in a game I was running and players decided to use it, I'm very much on the side of rule of cool. Let the player let the player do the fun thing. If they find an absurd mixture of technique, execution, ability, spell that just happens to result in something busted and awesome, let them do something busted and awesome.
Just don't let them do it every single time necessarily. If that's all you end up doing, it ends up being a problem. Gail, what's up?
Yeah.
Well, and it wasn't without risk. You hit me with one of them, and the damage you did was enough that when I got hit by Barnabas, I went down.
That's true.
If I hadn't taken that damage from you, I could have survived Barnabas's hit.
Yep.
Awkward
not without
Soapy,
risk.
welcome. Glad you're here. We're just wrapping
it
up.
already has a hell of a restriction as is because of its AoE effect. I can't use it in all situations. I can't use it against people who are locked in melee combat. It's really only an answer for things that are like that we see, like when the bad guys are isolated and clustered up. That's the only scenario in which is uniformly useful.
Now the last, go ahead, Gail.
I also really liked how you buffed Belak's side one more time by giving him Barnabas.
Yes. And that, of course, was another piece of emotional manipulation where my goal was to make you all cry as many times as I could. And Barnabas, I knew would hit hard because Barnabas became a fan favorite immediately. Like, I could tell in session 0 that chat was really focused on Barnabas. So, of course, I was going to have him do a heel turn. And it turned out beautifully. It could not possibly have gone better if we had scripted it.
Our delightful curmudgeon.
Yeah, if we had scripted out how the fight went to be as dramatic as possible, I don't think it would have been as dramatic as it ended up turning out.
It really would not have been.
The fact that he missed me every time except for the last one when he dropped me.
Yeah.
That was just, the dice.
It was.
Yeah, sometimes the dice create better story than we could ever possibly think of on our own. And, you know, it's rare, but it does happen. And it absolutely happened with this fight, especially with that Thunder Wave.
Yeah.
Like for me, that was like a specific goal. It's like I wanted that specifically to happen in that fight. That was like a bucket list item for me in that fight, even if I knew it was going to be completely to Belak's detriment.
Yeah.
But when you have a character like that, when you basically someone says, "Here's the villain, go have fun," you basically go play it to effectively lose. With
of course,
like
I mean,
this.
you know, coming and playing the villain, you know that you're going to lose.
Yeah. But you're going to do it with style.
Yeah.
So, you know, I come in with the Thunder Wave and the Queen of the Night aria, and apparently scared some people in chat with it.
That was really cool.
For those in the who are still left in the chat and still sticking with us, I am classically trained. So,
Jeff,
the encounter as it is designed, I can see what they're trying to go for. The entire run the gauntlet and then fight a medium powerful bad guy and then
when you are low on resources and you've used a lot of your stuff.
And it's intended to be like this giant it's a good for on a isolate inside of context of it being like an encounter meant for PCs around a kitchen table, doing that kind of intense resource management, because twig bites go down in one hit. They have crappy stats, that you just churn through them all the way to the end. You see the bad thing with the very evil MacGuffin that is very obvious. Take that out. it all works really, really well for that kind of design. But for this format, namely the Twitch format where everything's going to be broadcast, it's not terribly exciting. It's a slog.
Yeah.
Like that entire last chain is easily a session in itself, and it would be a long session, like 3 or 4 hours just in combat.
Yeah, I agree. The Belak fight took 2.5 hours as it was. Like the YouTube, when I finally put the YouTube video out on youtube.com/gaming mathematically, please like and subscribe. When that goes up, I had to break it up into 2 pieces. Like we did. Like we had a break in the middle of the fight, right? Because holy crap, it was a long fight. It was a very satisfying fight, but it was a very long fight. The one last thing that I want to mention is that the whole thing about the fruit being like a bunch of them, that was me. The module says that 2 fruit are produced by the Gulthias tree a year. 1 apple in summer and 1 apple in winter. I thought, God, that's boring.
That's also terrible. That's like that just means that like
It's not
either
an industry.
Belak, that just makes you bad at your job.
Right. And Belak's whole goal is to try to cultivate the seeds and plant the seeds to make the twig blights and that sort of thing. That's another way we could go, because who knows how many twig blights are up there on the surface already. Like, we could continue through this story. But there was only the 1. And I thought, no, for something to be notable, people would be selling it. And something that is limited edition is very popular, right? And like, if you had somehow managed to find a way to secure the Gulthias tree, I guarantee you that one of your noble families would have been able to find a way to make gold hand over fist from it. But of course, that's not the way it went down. And I think I prefer that it was destroyed because there are complications to having it around for the world at large.
I'm totally down for like having like because the twig blights make are what I would call like the perfect environmental villain. Like in the same way that goblins are intended to be in the base setting of a species that is nothing but destructive to its environment, and like it's it has problematic elements when you run it as if you run it with the idea that like goblins are sentient and sapient.
Yeah.
But with twig blights,
the twig blights, no.
They are explicitly like elemental monsters that are there all they want to do is feed the tree, and feed the tree is done by like killing things and bringing its meat to the tree.
Yeah,
which is it is explicitly fucked up. It is explicitly the result of a deranged mind.
Yeah,
it is. It makes for a convenient, uncomplicated villain.
So
it's more like a drone than an animal.
Exactly.
Before I talk, and I'm gonna have us go in the next few minutes because we've been going for a very long time. But I would like to really quick ask: does anybody have any more game design or game theory notes or storytelling notes on any of the Sunless Citadel module, either as intended or as I ran it?
I do. I want to see if anyone else does. Because I feel like I've been talking a lot.
I like how, despite what it says about the tree thralls here, you let us save Barnabas.
Yes, I wanted him to be in an early state. Like, he had just been indoctrinated and he wasn't quite there yet. I wanted him to be savable, but I wanted the other 2 to not be. I wanted that dichotomy to exist, yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely something to be said about making modifications to modules like this, specifically for the format in which you're delivering it. Like, if this was at a table, you could absolutely go through every single little thing.
Yeah.
And be fine. But when you're also dealing with the fact that you're on like a Twitch format, you need to make sure that, you hit certain story points, and you need to make sure that it stays entertaining. Because really what makes this entertaining is the players, not necessarily what's in the book.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah, and I absolutely I love the fact that you're trying to, play this pretty close to, modules as written, but you're also being mindful of the medium itself.
Yeah. Yeah, both, and I'm also trying very hard to play to my players, because I've played with all of these folks to one degree or another, I know sort of what they like and what they're going for. And also, everyone's been very super open with me from session 0 onward about what they were interested in as a player. So I was in a position where I could provide that because I knew what it was and I did not have to guess. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
I do have one little bonus thing that I want to show you.
Please do.
So when I was actually going through all the various costuming, specifically to prep for the intro video and the actual appearance of Belloc on screen, I found this little bauble on Wish.
Ooh.
I get the camera to focus on it, but as you
Heart
see,
with
it's just
leaves.
it's just basically it's a wooden heart where it's basically got branches and whatnot growing out of the various arteries and veins that would be going into the heart itself.
That is absolutely beautiful.
Unfortunately, it was way too small and would have gotten completely lost in all of the costuming. It was even
And the
just
lighting.
kind of lost. Yeah, the costuming, the lighting, everything else. It was even just lost on me just wearing it here in like the back half of this. But so yeah, if you Rob, if you need to throw in an extra magic item to folks,
we've got a thing there.
We have
Fair
a thing,
enough.
and I will happily, mail this off to whoever gets it so they can have it as a Fizz wrap for future filming.
That'd be cool.
Phenomenal. All right, friends, please go ahead and say goodnight to chat. I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight to chat in a moment as well. We have been going for 4 hours and 55 minutes as of this moment. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you all for a little bit. I will say goodnight to chat, and then I will come back and debrief with you all.
I have plugging.
Oh, of course. Well, I'm very glad that you mentioned this because you gotta plug those pluggables. What do you got for us, Renee?
Oh yes. So, just me in general. You can pretty much find me anywhere on the internet as Hedgie Cleric. Here on Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, etc. On Twitter, I play Pravda, the Malkavian Harpy for the Vampire the Masquerade roleplay tag Exeter by Night. I am currently head angel of Heaven Inc. for Boardroom Armageddon, done through Life Action Roleplay. And on Saturday, I'm actually doing my own stream. I stream crafting on Saturdays, and with me will be the team behind Mighty Narwhal Productions. I was a contributing writer for Mora, which is their new RPG system that they're actually going to be launching a Kickstarter for on May 3rd. And so on May 1st, we're going to be sitting around. We're going to be talking about the game. Some of us are going to be crafting, some of us are not, and just really kind of getting that hype out there before we have the release. So I'm really excited for that. And then on the 14th, I will be running a game specifically using these rules on my own channel. But I'll be getting out more information for that shortly.
Phenomenal. With that, thank you all very much for being here. I appreciate you so much. Renee, I appreciate you specifically for sharing your wisdom and your game design knowledge with us and for being just an absolutely incredible villain. Gail, Jeff, I will catch all of you very soon. And for now, I am muting you so that nobody can hear you. Now it's just me. And now it is just me. Thank you very much, my friends. This has been one hell of a journey. I did not know what to expect when I first started this campaign. I knew it would be pretty short. I didn't think I would get a whole lot of people to watch, but I did. You've all been very, very helpful and very wonderful. You've supported me financially a little bit as I've been doing this, and I just cannot thank you all enough. So of course, yes, this is only season 1 of the Yawning Portal, and as things stand now, unless things change, we will be beginning the Forge of Fury with a new session 0, not 2 weeks from today, but 4 weeks from today. We are going to skip the next D&D game to give me and my players a chance to relax and prepare ourselves. I also need to obsessively dive into the next module so that I can begin to do the same thing I did with this and figure out how I'm going to use it and how I'm going to modify it and all that other good stuff. For now, You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at MathDemigod. You can find the VODs for this very video or for this very stream series by going to youtube.com/gamingmathematically. And finally, if you are interested in supporting a poor and struggling unemployed educator who is trying to use D&D and math to sort of, help entertain and educate people, you can find me at patreon.com/mathdemigod, or you can click the donate button directly below this chat if you are watching on Twitch. Friends, thank you. I'm gonna go pass out. Have a great night.